Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 23rd of Feb 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. As part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice. And the concept is very simple, that I want you to inculcate that skill of correlating the news with the examination related format. Right, so we have a question, let's say on this topic. So we'll do some additional research. We will correlate the static component and current, and your preparation is holistic, right? That is the idea. And naturally in the process, when you're analyzing this issue, you will learn as to the key information, facts and figures that can be asked in the prelims also, right? So it is a win-win situation and it will save you a lot of time and maybe also money. Right, now naturally when you're writing your answers, you want some sort of a evaluation also. In fact, my personal experience is when I believe that even when the content is given, the answers should be good or at least average, but still the demand of the question, the structuring, the content is problematic. So a small feedback, small evaluation will help you with that. So 2 answers per week are evaluated for free and you have to share your answers in handwritten format. I don't insist on the comment section thing, right? So you can just tell me that yes, you like the video and all those things, but write your answers. Don't waste your energy on the screen. Write your answers on pen and paper, maintain the register. These will act as your notes and share it with me on Telegram or WhatsApp. My personal details are there in the description box below, right? So this is a private affair. Okay, and yes, before going forward, do subscribe to my channel IASPrimers for regular updates. And there are hardly many things that go on our channel, right? So this is it. Okay, so today I have 3 questions. On my community page there are 2 questions, but in entirety I found a new concept that is with reference to Europe's interest in how is European security concerned with the security of Indo-Pacific, or how is it concerned with the impact of China's aggression in the recent times, right? So this is a new concept. And yes, as I told you before, we have a question on AFSPA and I have a question from a regional news, local news, but the issue with reference to higher incidence of crime against women, what is the reason for that and all that issues. So both covered from GS1 and GS2 perspective. Basically the difference is very simple. When we are looking at GS1, right, so women and the issues associated with women is specifically mentioned in GS1, so society component. But when we look at it from governance point, what is the government doing for the vulnerable section in particular, right? Then in that case, it becomes GS2, so governance. So the same issue can be asked in both ways. Only thing is your approach here will be to highlight social related factors and here governance related. What should the government do? What are the wrong with government? All those things. Okay. So let's move ahead with the analysis on AFSPA. So before going ahead, let's cover the news and then we'll come back to the question. So there was a panel formed on Armed Forces Special Powers Act, that it should be removed or not. So this was formed because of an unfortunate incident that took place in Nagaland, and lot of hue and cry had taken place because of this, right? So basic thing was that not so long ago there was intelligence report that came to the army that on this road, on a certain road, some militants are going to travel. So the army had ambushed them and they started shooting without investigating or without verifying that if these people were actually terrorists or not these people, on the people who were on the road, right? As a result of this, it was unfortunate, as luck would have it, they were not militants, right? So this was the situation basically. Okay, so this committee had been formed and there is a delay. And this committee is being headed by the Registrar General of India. So this is something new for me, right? So Registrar General of India is important for prelims. So Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India. So these are the basic details and what all things that they do, you can have a look at it. Okay, so if you see, we have the issue. We have the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which we have to define. We have certain concerns like human right violation and certain other allegations we can extrapolate. And should we should we, what are the concerns associated with it? Is it successful? What are the views of the army? And ultimately we come to what are the recommendations? Earlier also such incidents would have taken place and there must have been committees like this. So what are the views? So all of this will be covered in the analysis that I'm going to cover. Okay, now before going ahead, let's have a look at the past year question that was asked on this topic, right? So this was in 2015, and my general experience is, especially with internal security, I have taught it about 3-4 times. I have taught this at different institutions. So my experience is very simple. This is very rewarding, and we have a general theme, right? Same questions are being asked, only they are worded differently. So we have to define the thing. For example, in this case, we have to define the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. We have to focus on the aspect of human right violations, right? So, and then critically evaluate the requirement and reference to the view held by the apex court. So in this case, it is asking you us from the view of the Supreme Court, but should it be there, should it not be there? Basically the same issue is there. Okay, so let's quickly just read it. So human rights activists have constantly highlighted the view that the Armed Forces Special Power Act is a draconian act leading to cases of human rights abuses, right? So by the security forces. So what sections are opposed, and critically evaluate the requirement with reference to the view held by the Supreme Court. Now see, overall the same thing is there, but yes, it is very specific that you have to state the sections of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act and the view of the Supreme Court. And there must have been a court judgment, or it must have been heard in the Supreme Court when this question was asked, and that is why the phrasing is such. And yes, it helps. I mean, if you have prepared on these lines also, it will help. Of course, it will help. Okay, so what is Armed Forces Special Powers Act? So as the name itself says, Armed Forces Special Powers, right? There is a simple document actually of the Ministry of Home Affairs with reference to AFSPA. So I don't refer to Lakshmikant anymore now. So from there I have taken all these issues, and including the Supreme Court judgments are also there. So I have noted down some, right? Okay. So what are these? These are special powers. And what are special powers? Special powers are basically exceptions that have been given to somebody. So in this case, we have, it is basically the governor. Let's say certain area is infested with militancy or terrorism. So governor under section 3 of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act can declare a particular region as a disturbed area. So governor of a state, now this need not be an entire state, right? Certain parts of a state can also be declared as disturbed area. So it can be either done by the governor or it could be done by an administrator, especially in case of union territory. So I cross-checked this. I found no reference of president. These are important for prelims now. Okay. So we have this Armed Forces Special Powers Act. It was introduced in 1958, long ago, with reference to the militancy that was taking place in Nagaland at that time, and then it was extended to the northeastern states, and then also to Jammu and Kashmir, the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Right, so it is there. Tripura has been a state from where the militancy the disturbed area component has been removed. Okay. Now, what are special powers, or what is this Armed Forces Special Powers Act? It gives the permission, right? You have the literature over there. We'll just read this because we have to do the relevant provisions. So, Armed Forces Special Powers Act provides, section 4, provides the army or the armed forces as the power to fire upon anybody, right? Anybody whom in a law enforcement situation, and that can also be to shoot to kill. Now normally with reference to police, these are civil areas, so normally with police, right, non-disturbed areas, so police has to seek a sanction. They have to get a warrant or a permission from the magistrate so that the misuse of power does not take place. But since they are in such a difficult situation where, anytime something can come up, so they have the permission to shoot to kill, right? So it can be there. They can also arrest people. Arresting people is under section 5 of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and they can also destroy any structure suspected to house an arms dump, shelter from armed attacks, anything, right? So these are the provisions basically. So section 4 is to shoot to kill. Then another section was added where it allows the any vehicle to be stopped, searched and seized forcibly if it is suspected of carrying proclaimed offenders or ammunitions. Then section 5 provides for, I told you, with arresting somebody, right, detaining somebody. And I have provided the relevant provisions. Article 21 says that right to protection of life, a person's liberty or life cannot be taken except for the procedure established by law. Article 22 provides from protection against arbitrary arrest or detention. But this one provides for it. Okay. Declaration of a particular area as a disturbed area. Now, if a governor declares a particular area as a disturbed area, then the issue arises two things. Sometimes there may be an allegation that this is arbitrary, right? There has to be some sort of a framework according to which the governor decides that, see, this area is a disturbed area. So this the Supreme Court had said in the Inderjeet Barua versus the state of Assam. And furthermore, this Armed Forces Special Powers Act it was supposed to be for a limited time, that see, this area has a lot of militancy and terrorism going on, so for a limited time these powers had been given, right? But what do we see is that 1958, so for a very, very long time this is still continuing, right? This is there. And Article 14, not really the provision of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Article 14 provides for equal protection of laws, right? But in this case, rule of law and equal protection of laws. So Supreme Court has held that be it a militant, be it a terrorist or a normal citizen, everybody enjoys the rule of law and equal protection of laws, and the one has to go in accordance with the law. Now, law provides for IPC and other provisions to provide for taking action, but here there are exceptional powers over here. And what is that exceptional power? Imagine if somebody is killed, right? In an action, somebody is killed or something happens. Normally, there has to be an FIR that is filed. Somebody has died, be it a accused person, an FIR is filed and an investigation takes place. That if the power was, abuse of power has not taken place, to cross-check that. But in this case, and given the difficult situation in which they function, they have a legal immunity, and immunity has been provided to them, right? So legal immunity has been provided from prosecution. Now in this case, it is not a complete immunity, because immunity is provided, but it is still to be, permission has to be sought from the center basically. If prosecution has to be done. Investigation can be done. Investigation is to ascertain that rightful conduct was there, but to prosecute and level charges, that is prosecute. So here in this case, center's approval is needed. So this is the legal immunity that it has, and normally what we see is that the center does not provide sanction for prosecution. And I know this very clearly because there was a Supreme Court where the judge said that who has stopped you from investigation? Armed Forces Special Powers Act provides protection, legal immunity, and provides that you cannot charge a person, but you can still investigate. So they had scolded or chided the Central Board of Investigation, CBI. Okay, now coming to the answer, right? Now when you have this question or any question of this sort, you have to state the violations. You have to start by, either you can start by a definition, or you can express the concerns, human right violation or certain allegations that have been expressed, right? So in this case, I was looking for facts, but basically we have facts from Manipur. So there was a committee also that was formed that said that about 1528 people over the years have gone missing. Suddenly, they were in contact with the military and suddenly they have gone missing. Then there are certain cases where we find wrongful conduct that has taken place, right? Sometimes successfully also investigated, but it is very, very rare. Then there are human rights organizations, Amnesty International, etc., who say that, and including the government's own bodies, who have said that Armed Forces Special Powers Act legitimizes impunity for sexual violence. Right, so here we have certain incidents where such things have taken place. Right, so you have certain violations, you explain this, then state the provisions, because we have to go in this order because the question is quite elaborate. Right, then state these things over here, and then come to the views of army. there must be a legitimate cause for having such a power, right? And army is operating in that area. So what would army say? Army normally says that it will affect the morale of the forces which are operating in such a difficult situation, and it is justified. But morale, because if they shoot somebody and they feel that they will be prosecuted or action will be taken, it will affect the flexibility at which they can operate and function. And the rate at which this militancy and the incidents take place, it's quite quick. It is not planned, like in case of police encounters, right? So this thing has to be kept in mind. So it will affect the morale, it will affect the operational flexibility, and who knows that in the recent times, as we can see with reference to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the militancy has come down. So who knows that if we revoke this protection, then in that case the militancy will again shoot up, right? So these are the issues over here. So we have the concerns, we have the definition, we have the concern, we have the views of the military also. Now, some other concerns that I would like to add is that with reference to this, these are the things that you have over here, right? Article 21, 22 also have listed. Furthermore, we can say that Armed Forces Special Powers Act has been seen as a weapon of subjugation, right? Using military, and the presence of military itself or anybody can be arrested, and this or some things can be done to you. So it is seen as a weapon of subjugation by the state on the people. Okay, so this is one issue. And furthermore, over the years, like 50 years is a very, very long period of time, we still find incidents of militancy. It's only these few years where we find that the incidence of militancy has come down, but still it had been there for a very long period of time. So if Armed Forces Special Powers Act is so effective, then why is, I'm not countering this view, I'm just presenting a viewpoint. So why is why is militancy still there? That is the issue. And here we have to look at it this way, that military is killing the militants, but militants are coming up. And somewhere it is a reaction against that presence or that human right violation or something or the other takes place, right? There will be incidents like these. If you have power, there comes responsibility also with that. But some people, there does take place abuse of the power also. Right, so this is the viewpoint that you have to present. This is very important. Now here we have certain committee recommendations, right? So we have Jeevan Reddy committee to review Armed Forces Special Powers Act. This was the place for where I get the data 152.8. So it is seen as a symbol of operation, right? Justice Santosh Hegde committee, and we have Justice Verma committee. Justice Verma was basically to look into the issue of sexual offences and to bring about amendments to the criminal act or the criminal law from the point of view of women or sexual violences. So here he has looked into the issue of Armed Forces Special Powers Act and sexual violence. Second, ARC, Administrative Reforms Committee, right? So this commission had also recommended that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act should be repealed. Now the issue arises, the answer doesn't end at this. You have to very briefly state that there have been various committees who have expressed. Justice Verma committee also said that it legitimizes impunity for sexual violence. But you cannot undermine the aspect of army, and this is quite a view justified. And you know what, I'll tell you something. Your GS3 paper is most likely to be evaluated by somebody who's an expert in this field, who has some experience in defense and who has worked in IDSA. Right, so, and they are very sensitive to all this. Okay, so here you have to bring about the issue that this is there, right? They have said this, as at the same time army, the viewpoint is there. So we need to have a balanced approach. In this case, recently General Huda, right, who was with the surgical strike and all. So he also recommended that Armed Forces Special Powers Act should go away. He didn't really say this. He said that it could be under a different law. For example, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So in that it could be accommodated rather than having this law that gives so much powers. So under the Anti-Terror Act. So Unlawful Activities Prevention Act is basically all the terror acts that were there that have been removed, and instead there is one umbrella act. So in that, Armed Forces Special Powers Act should be there with some protections. Right, so this is how you can conclude and give a balanced viewpoint of your answer. Right. Okay, this is a very short news. Civic body polls to be held in April. So I'm not interested here. What I'm interested is Lakshmikant, State Election Commission. Right. So we have the Election Commission of India. Which all bodies does it conduct elections to? You need to know what is the State Election Commission. It is a constitutional body, and it was a consequence of the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. Right. Basically, the amendments with reference to the creation of the local bodies. So for local bodies, be it the panchayati level or be it with reference to I think it's 72nd, 73rd, or be it with reference to municipalities or urban local bodies. So all of this is done by the State Election Commission. Right, so this is it. This you need to know. And for every other person, it is the Election Commission of India that is responsible for conducting the elections, including the elections to the President, Vice President, as well as members of the Rajya Sabha. Very important, right? So this we had the news, few rapes reported, fewer still get attention. This is the thing that actually should get your attention also. This is a local news, right? But then this is something that should draw your attention, and pretty sure whichever state you are from, such incidents would not be uncommon. Okay, so we have a case where 1725 rapes were reported in the capital. And now what we see is that if your social status or the place you are or your family background is not very well off, right? If you're from Adivasi, Dalit or Muslim women, and particularly economically also disadvantaged, then police or administration will not take these matters very seriously. So this was a story basically of that person, unfortunate incident. Right, so this is what the human rights agencies have brought to light over here, and which we know actually, if anything happens, right, when you go to if you are powerful, you are affluent, you can get your work done, else nothing will happen. Maybe sometimes it happens, but these crimes are very serious in nature, and few exceptions are also not justified, and these are a high number of exceptions. Okay, now from this news we can derive certain issues. Right, so first of all, not just rapes, right? Rape is it's a serious crime, but there are other crimes also. So reasons for crimes against women. We find higher incidence of crime against women. Why? What are the causes? What are the issues with the criminal justice system? Right? Anything like, for example, this is an example where the state is not focusing upon areas, right, marginalized. We also find that there is the issue with the poor conviction rate. So low conviction rate, poor quality of investigation, delays. Sometimes the character assassination of the woman itself takes place. We have politicians who say that the woman should not wear jeans or some other dress. Right? So what are the issues with the criminal justice system? And that is the problem, because if things were fine, then people could be held accountable and it would have acted as a strong deterrent effect. Should there be a capital punishment for rape? This is one more thing. Basically, this Hindu newspaper that we have, this was when child sex rape was capital punishment was introduced for this purpose. So this thing was introduced, and this Hindu editorials that we read, they were critical of this view. They say that less people will actually complain, because most of the time the violence that takes place, it is people with people that are close, maybe in the neighborhood or relatives. Right, so in that case, the reportage is low. Okay, now here one more thing is that few people come up and complain because it is also about a matter of honor. Right, so honor of the family and all those things, a girl will not get married, and such issues are also there. Okay, so let's look at the question over here. So higher incidence of crimes against women of serious nature, both in private and public sphere, right? So both in private and public sphere are witnessed. Discuss the issue, highlighting the underlying causes and suggest suitable remedial measures, right? So every single aspect with reference to crimes against women, and please note, crimes against women is lots more, right? So it could be rape, it could be prostitution, trafficking, it could be, I mean, trafficking is trafficking for sexual exploitation and prostitution. So that is again in a way rape, sexual harassment at workplace, and also domestic violence. And we are looking at adding one more component, that is marital rape. Now all of this have certain factors in common actually, and that is the women are being at a place at a disadvantaged position in the patriarchal nature of the society. So we'll come to that. So let's look at the reasons for the crime, right? So reasons for higher incidence of crime. Now this is a homework for you. So identify, if you have to state the higher incidence of crime against women, you have to establish this. If you want better marks, right? If you want 4 out of 10, that's a different story. Nobody wants that. If you want this to be 6 or 7 out of 10, then you have to establish. And how do you do it? Just Google, right? You'll find NCRB data also. So if you just find, you will easily get this. So do this practice, find the fact and establish that there is higher incidence of crime against women, and also establish that the rate of crime against women is increasing. And I'm not making this up, I have the facts. Okay, so establish this. Then focus on the aspect, you have to, before going ahead, focus on the aspect of unsafe environment, right? So focus on the aspect of unsafe environment, be it private and be it public sphere. So you have to elaborate this also, because it is specifically stated in the question. Now naturally crimes against women are in the both places, right? So the private sphere, what are the conditions, and in the public sphere, in the workplace, or be it an incident with reference to in any public place, some incidents had taken place. Okay, so this is there, and what can be done actually, this also you need to understand. So let me just write and I'll recall what has to be done with reference to public sphere also, right? So we have right, okay. So what are the, you do this unsafe environment, then normalization of the sexually hostile behavior. This is there, normalized, these things are normalized. So sexist attitude, sexually hostile attitudes, right? We see this on the trolling also, and all the abuses that are there. I mean, you can also include the more established people also, powerful people also, not even they are spared. Right, so that attitude is reflected in that thing also, the trolling that is there. So that that attitude and the nature is there, and that is the problem. Okay, so this is there, sexist. And one more thing I think we can add to this is that one imposing, one posing over the other person. So reflection of rape is also used as an instrument of power of the man on the woman, and as a means of punishing the person. I think you should watch this movie. And in fact, actually, if I take the offline class, I keep referring to movies a lot, right? So the Pink movie also, that reflected this case. Okay, right. Okay, this is there. Then the third point, low socioeconomic status, poverty and unemployment. So these are also factors. Normally you will find them to be more vulnerable, right? People who are from the disadvantaged sections, they are more vulnerable. We also find higher incidence of crimes where the socio-economic status, poverty, unemployment is higher. Okay. In fact, you can see this also. These people are, such people are not able to seek justice, right? So people are not reporting, and those who are reporting also are not able to get justice. So naturally, the next point that flows is lack of accountability and low rate of convictions. If you can state the conviction rate, it's sone pe suhaga, right? It's very good, right? So this is there. And this is the thing that is, we are talking about the poor functioning of the criminal justice system. Now, how does this impact the woman? Naturally, this will lead to trauma. Right, it will traumatize, it will affect the confidence of the woman, it will lead to depression, it may lead to depression. It has a bad impact on the society, particularly where sex is a taboo subject, and in the patriarchal society like ours, right, it is also perceived as honor, right? So these things impact on women and society. And I think one more thing we'll add to this, not just the immediate people. If we have higher incidence of crime against women, right, it affects the participation of women in the workforce. in the public sphere, if the women are feel unsafe in the public life when they go or when they are in the workplace, we have so many incidents of sexual harassment at workplace, or in a taxi something happens. So in that case, again, it will lead to poor participation. It will lead to women wearing parda and all those things for protection, right? So these things are there. So it affects negatively. It affects the girl-child education. It leads to child marriages. So that is also one more thing, that the family wants to get rid of the burden of having a child whom they have to protect all the time. So then it is the responsibility of the in-laws, right? So that is also a notion. Now when you elaborate this more, it becomes society actually. So it becomes GS1. Now I refer to the World Health Organization, right? So these are the steps that they have recommended. I'll simplify this, and these are not very holistic, so I'll just simplify this. There are three things basically. So first of all is prevention, right? We have to prevent the crime from taking place. And what can be done about this? What is the government doing? We have the Nirbhay Fund, right? So what is the Delhi government doing with the Nirbhay Fund? We having women exclusive metro, women exclusive buses, CCTVs, right? So law enforcement, so that the crime doesn't take place at all. Women helpline number 1091, all those things can be quoted. And I think when you do this now, you are actually reflecting your awareness of your day-to-day things, and you're putting this in answer writing, and that again leads to more marks. Okay, so this is there. Then in case when the crime takes place, so mitigation, or we can look at the aspect of not even criminal justice system, right? So we have to look at this aspect, that if a crime has taken place, then we should ensure that the woman gets justice. And this includes the legal aspect, the reforms in the laws. So we just did Justice Verma Committee report. We have the amendments to the criminal law, right? So Criminal Act was amended in 2013 on the basis of the recommendations that was given by Justice Verma. Establishment of fast track courts. So these are the things that need to be done to improve accountability and conviction rate. And also we need to focus on reforming the society. But these take time, right? Reforming is a very long term, it will take a lot of time, where we can overcome these barriers of sexist, sexually hostile attitude. We change this by means of education, by sensitizing the people, which the WHO article is saying, right? So doing this, so this will take time. Empowering the women, so low socio-economic status, focusing on women-led development, Prime Minister Modi, right? So he's been telling us about having a development that is not just focusing on inclusivity, gender inclusivity, but focusing on women playing a role in development aspect, women-led development, right? So these are the things that you can state in your answer. Rest, we have a scheme of the central government known as Nari Shakti. So that is specifically with reference to protection of the women. There are states, specifically Odisha, so they have schemes with reference to this. We have a scheme known as Ujjwala. Ujjwala is with reference to women who are affected by trafficking. That is a scheme nevertheless, right? So we have Ujjwala, we have Swadagriha, women are Swadagriha house. So where women who are affected by all these violence and other things, they be protected. Okay, and I think you can also add laws like Protection from Sexual Harassment Act, then reforms in the Companies Act. The companies are required to have an internal complaints committee, which is to deal with the issue of sexual harassment at workplace, right? Prohibition of Dowry Act. So all of this were there in the PIB. Okay. Now I'll cover this very briefly, and this is with reference to Lokpal and Lokayukta's Act. So basically what has happened is recently the government of Kerala, the state legislature of Kerala, I think they brought about an ordinance, not even the government. So they brought about an ordinance to amend the Lokayukta Act, and there has been a controversy in the state of Kerala. So before moving ahead, I just want to cover this from pre-perspective over here, because then again there'll be a lot of questions for you to write. And in fact, I did share a question on this sometime back. Yeah, and this person's views on constitution, views on legislative functioning are very important. He was a former Secretary General of Lok Sabha, right? One more thing, he comes on that Lok Sabha TV Insights and Rajya Sabha TV Big Picture. So very important. Okay, so very simple. To deal with the issue of corruption, the Parliament passed a law known as Lokpal and Lokayukta Act. So Lokpal is basically to deal with the corruption at the level of center, and Lokayukta is for the states, right? So this was passed by the Parliament. Now what is this? This is basically inspired from Sweden and this Scandinavian countries who had this system of ombudsman. So who is an ombudsman? Let's say somebody who has a complaint and complains specifically with reference to corruption. So this entity is a very powerful authority that looks into the allegation of corruption and takes action against them, right? So it basically is to deal with the issue of corruption. So a neutral body has to be established for this. Okay, so this is an ombudsman, and I think ombudsman is also, you must have heard, with reference to the banking sector. So somebody who has a complaint with the banks, so they can go to the ombudsman. Okay, so anybody whom the people can reach out to. So this law was passed in 2013, but this was because of the Anna Hazare movement. Otherwise, the government did not want to introduce this. Then we had the first ARC. We did the second ARC. Now the first ARC under Morarji Desai government. So they also, Morarji Desai. So they also had backed. They also had backed that we need to have some agency like Lokpal to deal with the issue of corruption. So this is primarily with reference to the central government, and this includes also the Prime Minister and his ministers, right? So they are also there, but this body cannot tell the president that they can be removed. Now what does this ombudsman do? The ombudsman investigates. There are two wings. So one is the wing for investigation. Investigation is when you investigate, when you see if wrongful activity has been done or not. And then comes, after investigation, what do? You prosecute. And what is prosecution? You level charges against a person, right? So, and then you try to prove them at the court or a trial court, wherever. So there are two wings over here. Okay, so this is there. Now, if investigation is being done, then in that case, once the investigation has been concluded, it will go to a special court. So this has been stated over here. And which all matters of corruption are looked. So the corruption things are coming from the Prevention of Corruption Act, but not restricted to it. So Prevention of Corruption Act is again with reference to the center, and in this, and the Lokpal and Lokayukta, when they are investigating a case, they seek the help of the CBI, CVC, so anti-corruption bodies, right? And they have authority over them, they have control over them. And let's say if a officer is investigating a case that is being handled by the Lokpal, so that person cannot be removed arbitrarily. The permission of the Lokpal is needed. In this case, let's be limited to Lokpal only, right? So this is with the center over here. And what does the Lokpal consist of? Lokpal primarily consists of a chairperson and members. And who are these members? 4 judicial members, and the chairman will be the incumbent means present Chief Justice of India or a retired Supreme Court judge. And the same is applicable for Lokayukta also, right? So Chief Justice just replaced the Supreme Court with the High Court, Prime Minister with the Chief Minister, same things are there. Right, so this is there. So it is the president appoints based on the recommendations of a selection committee consisting of Prime Minister, Speaker of Lok Sabha, etc., etc. Right, and this you can replace with CM, etc. Right, so this is being done over here. One more thing, Lokpal is coming under. It has certain protections. The funding that is coming, the operations is coming from the Consolidated Fund of India. That means that the institution of Lokpal or the people who are working, their salaries, their money that is required for their functioning is not dependent on the executive or on the parliament, right? It is drawn from the Consolidated Fund of India, right? So this is a very important thing that you need to know. And furthermore, I expect a question on these lines, that which of the following institutions, there are various constitutional bodies and statutory also. So those institutions which are being paid out of the Consolidated Fund of India are mentioned in one of the schedules of the Constitution. I can't remember. So you please write down in the comment section which schedule and which of the institutions are part of it, right? So is Election Commission of India getting salary from the CFI? So such questions can be asked. Right, so this is it. And now what happened? So Lokpal is there, right? Now this Lokpal and Lokayukta Act basically says that the state can also pass their own laws. Right, so this is a state subject, so state can pass their own laws, so they have to establish a Lokayukta and pass the law to that effect. So what did the state of Kerala do recently? They had a law already, but let's say if there is an allegation of corruption, so the Lokayukta will give its report to the governor and the governor can remove that person. Right, that was the law. But in this case, what is happening is that the governor need not remove that person against whom allegation has been there, but instead it can review what the Lokayukta has given, whatever the report has given, and it can take a decision with its own mind. So it brings arbitrariness, it brings randomness to the functioning. And given the stature of these people and the people how they are appointed, right, they are not like anybody. They are very senior people, and with a lot of investigation, a lot of scrutiny has been done, and that has to be, then it should be implemented. Right, so this is what this article is all about. Okay, so this is primarily with reference to Mr. Jaishankar, who was in Europe, right, and then he goes to France. I don't know which one is from Europe and France, so that you can figure out. So foreign ministers were meeting, and this was in the backdrop of the Ukrainian crisis that were there. So in this context, it says that most countries who are looking into this issue, they want diplomatic solution to the problem. They don't want war. That is what Mr. Jaishankar has said. Now in this regard, right, we are also talking to, imagine this person is from the French foreign minister. So he's telling his counterparts that, see, we can work on France is a country of EU, so we can work on the FTA, that is India EU FTA. So that is one that was covered yesterday. And other thing is they are saying is that, see, the interest of Europe, you don't see that this is Europe over here and this is the Indo-Pacific. Actually, this is the Indo-Pacific, but with reference to European Union, according to them, this entire region is Indo-Pacific. Right, clear? USA and most other countries believe the Indian shoreline, this Andaman, see, this is the Andaman, so this from here to here is Indo-Pacific. And European Union, the entire region is Indo-Pacific. So what Mr. Jaishankar is saying, that don't think that, see, this is Europe and you are far away from China and what all is happening in this region, that your security is free from the developments in Indo-Pacific. You need to be mindful of that. And this drew my attention. What if this comes in the examination? So please read the statement over here. So in recent weeks, Indo-Pacific has also emerged as a concept connected to European security, indicating that today we see challenges on that score with clarity that proximity brings. And believe me, distance is no longer an insulation, right? So basically he's saying, he's prodding the European Union countries to play a greater role in the Indo-Pacific. So we already have the Quad members. So we have USA, Australia, Japan, right? So now he's saying that, and they're like-minded countries actually. So EU should also play a greater role in this regard, especially with regard to this country who is being more and more aggressive, hostile in the recent times. I'll come to this, right? So I'll discuss this question now. So Indo-Pacific is emerging as a concept that is closely connected to European security. A comment with reference to Europe. Let's let it be at comment with reference to European Union. I think I could have framed this better. Okay, so just from the point of view of European Union, you have to write your answer. right? I wanted to be specific to that only. Okay. So first of all, in the recent times, we are seeing that European Union is having greater engagement in the Indo-Pacific region. So recently in 2021, EU released the document also where it highlighted its strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. And that is how we know the interpretation of Indo-Pacific for European Union, that it is coming from the shores of Africa to eastern shores to this region. Okay, now what we are seeing over here is that traditionally the Europe was looking at Indo-Pacific from the point of view of economic interest. But in the recent times, there is focus on the strategic dimensions, the geopolitical dimensions also. So we are seeing that EU is being more proactive in the recent times, especially with reference to connectivity. So this is the European Union's Global Gateway Initiative. Right, so in that Global Gateway Initiative, it will play greater role in the politics of the world. They want to be more assertive in that front, right? Traditionally, it has been US, so they want to have their own space of their own. So within that, there is connectivity partnership. So connectivity is also part of it. So India European Union connectivity partnership. So there. And specifically when we are looking at India, where we are looking at India, how India and European Union can work together to fund or to partner in the connectivity related aspects. And what is connectivity basically? And this is important. When we talk about connectivity, we are basically looking at infrastructure. So rail, road, ports, airports. Now imagine with reference to Sri Lanka, when we were talking with debt trap diplomacy of Bangladesh, right? So China is giving them funding, these countries want funding, they don't have an alternative, and because of this, the countries are falling into a debt trap. They are losing their sovereignty, they are losing their autonomy as a result of this. They are giving land for 99-year lease. So this will act as a great front. So infrastructure related thing, we are concerned that China's Belt and Road Initiative, right? Just draw a line, and this is, I'm drawing it right. So this is the Belt and Road Initiative connecting based on the ancient Silk Route of China, right? So connecting the eastern side of China to Europe. And one belt, one road, again this maritime Silk Route basically. So series of ports connecting China to Europe and also other countries of course. Okay, so there is a concern and we are looking at a viable option with reference to European Union. Now, what are the concerns or aspirations of European Union over here? So first of all, we see that the thinking of European Union is changing from economic to strategic thinking. Now earlier, EU was very skeptical about engaging into this issue, talking about this Indo-Pacific region, because that they felt that because of the US-China tensions, either it will lead to, if they take a stand, it will affect relations with US, which is very important, specifically with reference to NATO, or it could alienate China, which is emerging as a major superpower in the recent times. So they didn't want to offend anybody and they were very neutral in this regard. But the member countries are coming up with more and more engagement. They are emphasizing Germany, France, so these countries are being more vocal about it. So in light of this, European Union thought might as well we also do it, right? So this is there. So now they are looking at it from strategic point of view. Okay, we'll discuss the strategic point of view. So first of all, what we see is that China is being more assertive. There is a rise of China, economic prosperity, but with that we also find China that is being more and more aggressive, right? So more aggressive, more expansionist policy. They are provoking other countries over here, be it with reference to the 9-dash line, them claiming the entire South China Sea, or be it with reference to Taiwan, right? So East China Sea, and then the island related disputes, Parcel Island, Marshall Island, and so many other islands. Okay, so we see China engaging into this. Now what is the problem over here? We see that China getting engaged in all this, it may affect that, for example, there is something known as rule-based order. The World War II took place because the countries were functioning on their own, Germany, and they were building their military, they were disregarding the international rules, and ultimately because of that, and because the countries turned blind eye to that, that is known as policy of appeasement, it led to the World War. So we have to respect the rules-based system or rules-based architecture or order, whatever you like to call it. So with reference to the 9-dash line, what we saw was that China lost this claim. But so they went to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, they lost the claim, and even then China said that to hell with you, we don't care. Right? Please don't write this. Okay. So Permanent Court of Arbitration. Right? So we see this. So likewise, our Mr. Jaishankar also said that we have written agreements with China, but China is not accepting this, and this means that it can actually create a instability across the world, and that will not bode well for the world as a whole, including European Union, European countries. Okay, so this is a cause of concern over here. Then furthermore, growing US-China rivalry affects Europe, right? It affects Europe. In one way, it can be about the autonomy part. If it leans with USA, then China is offended and like that. Okay. And furthermore, with greater tensions, if greater militarization takes place of this region, it may affect the strategic sea lanes of communication. China may dominate this entire region and may say that no trade will take place via this. So it may affect the economic security, and economic security is linked with national security. You can read our components of national security with reference to India also. So economic security is part of this. Food security is also part of this. Then what we are seeing is that with reference to technology, remember our minister said that proximity is not just about, with distance is there, but still there is proximity, digital proximity. So in this case, with reference to technology, we are using more and more China-made things. There is a concern that this 5G technology that is coming and China having an advantage over low-cost hardware. So they can use this to hack. And this will undermine the national security of the respective countries. It may concern supply chain resilience. So the control over the free sea lanes of communication, etc. will be hampered. Disinformation and freedom of navigation, same things. Similar things. Threat to rule-based architecture, and EU being a significant player EU wants to be a significant player in the region at this point of time. It wants to be more assertive and wants to attain strategic autonomy. It wants to get rid of that US dominance, right? So US as well as China, it wants to have a mind of its own over here and wants to engage on its own with reference to other countries over here. Now this could also be excess finance that is there, money that is there that can go to fund these projects and they can get better returns. That is also one more thing. Right, so these are the things that you have to bring about in your answer. You can have a look at the question once more. Right, so a comment from the perspective of European Union. This you can do then. You have any issue, just write in the comment section, I'll revert back. India sends first batch of aid to Afghanistan. So why this development is important is, one, we are sending humanitarian aid to Afghanistan because of this Taliban acquiring Afghanistan. There was a humanitarian issue. Okay, so this is there. We are sending us cereals, food, etc. So all that detail is mentioned over here. So as part of the United Nations World Food Program. Now, why is this more interesting is that this is the map of India, this is Pakistan, and this is Afghanistan. Pakistan never allows us access. We have tried this number of ways by means of diplomacy, having agreements with our member countries, but some way or the other, Pakistan obstructs our this thing. So either we look at the Chabahar port project, right, way around things, or we use the air, by means of air we go. So here we see that at least for this purpose, we are able to supply by means of road transport. So Pakistan is allowing us that access. So that is a progress in that regard. Right then, so this basically concludes our analysis, right? So this is it from my